Members are advised that Councillor Edna Finneran has given her apologies for today's meeting, and as the Chair, she's therefore unable to act in her capacity today. I would therefore ask for a nomination for a Chair for today's meeting.
I'll nominate Dave to Chair.
I'll second that.
Second it, is that agreed? Councillor Hanratty, could I invite you to sit next to Jed?
He's not mind doing it.
Sorry, I should have called you Councillor Hanratty. I should have done first names.
No. This will take us through, so we're up to agenda item 2, run through apologies.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for putting me in for the chair on a temporary basis. So we have apologies anyway for Edna Finneran, Janet Banks, Doreen Knight and Mike Sullivan, and Chris Page is attending as a substitute. Yeah. Okay, and also received apologies from the co-opted member Anthony Boyle, so there's no other apologies.
No other apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 3 is the declaration of interest. So, any members or officers have any declarations of interest to declare in relation to any item on the agenda? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 4 is the minutes of the last meeting, which is on pages 3 to number 10. The last meeting was held on the 18th of September. Are they approved? No matters arising? Agreed. Okay, thank you. It's going to be a quick meeting, this, isn't it? Okay, item 5 is the response to the key performance indicators, and we're going to ask the Assistant Chief Fire Officer Jed Sheridan to go through and present the report. Jed, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Members may recall during the Policy and Resource Committee held 12th of December 2024 at our Service Delivery Plan update report for July to September 24-25 was presented for review. During the meeting, several of our key performance indicators, excellent performance, were noted by members, particularly KPI TR08, which is related to our appliance standards. In particular, this is related to the first attendance of an appliance at all life risk incidents within 10 minutes. During this discussion, Councillor Makinson inquired about the attendance standards, noting impressive 96.4 response standard within 10 minutes, but it was also suggested that further scrutiny takes place around those occasions where the response times fell below that average. The Chief Fire Officer at the time welcomed further scrutiny of the response standards, and it was subsequently included within the scope of this committee's work plan. The following agenda item is to provide Scrutiny Committee members reassurance on methods of our key performance indicators relating to operational response, how these are monitored and how our performance is continually being driven for improvement and marginal gain. As such, members will now receive a detailed presentation by Group Manager Neil Mooney from Operational Response, outlining the progress the service has made to date in monitoring and improving our operational response standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. My name is Neil Mooney. I'm the Manager of Operational Response. So basically, I oversee the performance of our 21 community fire stations and oversee our key performance indicators relating to responding to incidents and our duties within the community. Take you through a presentation, just goes through a couple of our performance indicators that we have. The aim of the presentation I'm delivering today, we have a number of key performance indicators that we use to measure our response to incidents and our performance at incidents. We respond well to incidents, but we're always looking to improve, we're always looking to enhance our performance.
Neil, sorry, just to interrupt, I should have said as well, it is quite a detailed presentation with a lot of facts and figures. I'm sure members will have lots of questions, but just it'd probably be helpful if we can have the questions at the end because I'm sure Neil has preempted a lot of them. Hopefully he'll cover them in the outline of the presentation. Is that okay? Obviously, if there is something more urgent, shout out, but a lot of the detail will be covered in the presentation. Apologies, should have mentioned that at the start.
Okay, thanks.
Apologies, I didn't have my mic on. Is that better? So yeah, I'm going to talk today about some of our key performance indicators where we measure our response, talk about our performance, and just how we can provide a better, enhance our response for our communities within Merseyside, and also to allow scrutiny on our approach and our performance today. So I'll hopefully be able to answer all questions today that you have, but if not, I will endeavour to get back to you as soon as I can. We have a number of performance indicators in operational response, so I'm not going to list every single one of them that we have. The ones that I will talk about today will take part in the journey of an incident, from how we start, how we receive the initial call, to our tactics, to how we respond, how the fire appliances respond to incidents, and then our tactics, now we measure once we arrive at scene. Measure our response, our operational response, from the second that we receive a 999 call. Within fire control, apologies, the text is a bit small on this slide, but we have, from when a call received, when I was setting up the presentation, when I was looking for call handling, emojis and pictures of telephones have changed over the years, so we don't have a standard telephone. Everything is mobile phone these days. So it's indicative of the times, really, of data and of technology. But our KPIs for our call handling within fire control, we have two, and that is the percentage of 999 calls that are answered within 10 seconds. And then the second is our time spent to process a life risk call by fire control. We also measure our response from when appliances are alerted to how quickly we can get our fire engines on the road. So we measure from the second that the stations and appliances are alerted to the second that they start to respond, from basically when they get on the road and put the lights on and make their way from the station. We also measure our response standard, as the ACFO spoke about, our TR08, and that is the response standard. You'll hear it mentioned, be referred to as standard fire cover, appliance standard, but the KPI that we measure is the main one, is life risk instance, and it's the attendance of the first appliance within 10 minutes, and we aim to meet that standard on a minimum 90% of occasions. And then once we're in attendance at an instance, we monitor our tactics and performance, and we can do that via assessing the damage. So we have a KPI that monitors our tactics and how effective we are in dealing with fires, accidental dwelling fires, fires in the home, and that damage. We aim to keep the damage in the room where the fire started, so we measure our performance against that also. And then I'll talk at the end just about our operational assurance team, what we do in operational response, how we QA, how we look, how we basically are always looking to improve for our stations, and QA for our communities in Merseyside. Apologies, jumped ahead. So Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service Fire Control, it is the first step, the crucial step of providing our effective response, and it starts there with the 999 call. Our fire control takes anywhere in between, so last year they handled anywhere in between 125,000 and 130,000 calls into fire control. Not all of them were 999 emergencies, so the number across the top is taken from 2020 up until last year's performance, and that's the number of total of 999 emergency calls that they receive. The calls that go into fire control, so they can be 999 emergencies, admin telephone calls, calls from other blue light partners. and also managing national assets that we have through national resilience also. So it's not a control room of 20, 30 people, but it is a really it's an effective team, and they perform to a really high standard. 2 KPIs that we have to measure our response, let's say that start of our response in relation to emergency calls. Again, taking the data from 2020 to present day, the percentage of 999 calls that answered within 10 seconds. That sounds quite basic and quite easy to answer a phone call in 10 seconds, but it really isn't. So we have a target on that of 96%. As you can see, the performance across from 2020 to present day exceeds that. But what our fire control operators do, they don't just take emergency phone calls. They can be given fire survival guidance to people. So the person that's making that 999 call, that is their time of need. So they're dealing with people in distress. So they could be given fire survival guidance. What they're also doing is they are creating an instant log. They are mobilising appliances, mobilising our assets to emergencies, and they're also handling radio traffic from other incidents that are ongoing. So the work that our fire control, we really can't praise them enough, and the amount of workload that goes through from just one call, but also they'll also be dealing with duplicate calls. So one incident just doesn't generate one call. There we can see anything up to 20, 30 calls for one fire from concerned members of the public, which is what we want, but it has increased. So that KPI, I'm sure you'll all agree, the performance that fire control to answer a call within 10 seconds, it's a good standard, and it does give us that first crucial step in managing our response. The second KPI that comes from call handling from fire control is the average time taken to process a life risk call. We don't set a target on this KPI. This is one more for monitoring. So the aim of processing a life risk call is not to get someone off the call as quickly as possible. It's to deal with a quality call too. So if we are providing life-saving guidance and advice, we could be on the call for excess of 10 minutes to be able to reassure, calm that person down and give them that advice that they require. So we don't performance manage this, but it's more of an indicator for us to see where there are trends, which instant types that we have generate a longer processing of call. We can work with fire control to look into those instant types. Next KPI, so once we alert, so fire control can still be on the call, still dealing with the emergency call handling. We are then alerting appliances, so an instant log is being created and appliances are mobilised, and this is where our second KPI comes in terms of our response. We measure the time from that initial alert to where the appliance is basically on the road with the blue lights. We aim to get on the road to be mobile within 1.9 minutes, which equates to 1 minute 54 seconds. So what that translates to on the station is the crews being alerted, receiving the instant information, whether it's from printer, from radio, they're out and about. So they're not necessarily on the station, they could be out in the community doing prevention work, could be training, getting the instant information by the printer on station, giving the address out to the crew, or from the computer, the MDT on the appliance, make the way to the appliance, get donned in PPE, get on the road, get into the fire engine on the road. We aim 1.9 minutes, 1 minute 54, and we have a pass of 95% to every instant that we attend. So it's not just life risk instance, it's every single instance we aim to be fire engine on the road. This is our performance of that KPI. So the KPI name is DR23. and we performance manage this. So this gives us our performance again from 2020, and it's for all instances. So that equates to approximately 90,000 at the time, 90,000 mobilisations since 2020. The average over the 5 years is 95.4%, which it's a tough KPI to achieve. But our performance is, we are over targets, and we are at, let's say, average of 95.4. Just had the data provided, and for this year, for 25-26, we are at 95.7%, so we meet that standard, we continue to meet that standard. The data looks around 16,000 to 18,000 incidents per year. Some instance will have multiple fire engines attending that instance. So we check, we constantly monitor the KPI, and we feed back. So anytime where we don't meet the standard, where we don't meet that 1.9 minutes, we feed that back. So we QA all the data from strategy and performance. We're given a monthly report on, let's say, we have over 90,000 mobilisations over that time frame. It's a lot of mobilisations for us, but we run reports. And then we QA. So that is fed back from my team. QA where we don't meet the standard, where we don't meet that standard, and that's fed back to at station level, taken back to the station to find out basically reasons why, and also look for how do we improve, how can we respond, how can we meet that standard in the future. And some of the, when we do the QA, some of the reasons for if we don't respond within 1.9 minutes, and a multitude of reasons. So we could be out training on station, putting ladders back onto fire engines and getting them out on the road. Human error, we are human. There are times where we're not able to get to the fire engine for whatever reason, or issues relating to technology where we haven't hit the button or responded to fire control. These things do happen with mobilisation, but it's all part of that QA process then for us to look at that and go, how do we get better? How do we, as I say, our performance has been steady on this KPI, and it does, it's part of our, this sits within our response standard also, alerting the fire engine and getting the fire engine to scene. We're also investing in technology, advanced technology to assist us with alerts mobiles. So we do have, we're in the testing phase at the moment of enhanced mobilisation, which is a form of pre-alert, which you may have heard of. This should come into effect this year, and what that does is it works off the caller's location. So as soon as the caller's location, the 999 call goes into fire control, that should automatically send an alert to the nearest station of where that call is being received from. So in essence, we should be getting quicker at this KPI and then our response standard as a whole. And then our next KPI, standard of fire cover, is the appliance standard, and that is TR08. And this monitors the time from, takes the appliances from when they're alerted on the station to arriving at the scene of the incident. We aim to meet this on 90%, a minimum 90% of all life risk incidents in Merseyside, and it's across all of Merseyside. It's a standard all across Merseyside. We look at life risk incidents, and the definition of a life risk instance is there for us, but we define a life risk instance as any primary fire. So anything from a house fire, anything where house fire, flat fire, high rise, to buildings insurable loss, to where medical treatment is required. So anything from a road traffic collision, chemical instance, or what we call a special service call. And that includes also water rescue and mud rescue. So some of the risks that we have in Merseyside, transport, large vast areas of waterfronts, this captures all of those instances related to a life risk instance. We have over 400 incident types within Merseyside, so not all services have what we call a predetermined attendance. So in Merseyside, we have a house fire person reported. We will send 3 fire engines. An LTC with someone trapped inside or an injury, we'll send 3 fire engines. High-rise confirmed fire or high-rise instance, we'll send 4, maybe 5, depending on the circumstances. And all the services across the country. Each fire and rescue service sets their own standard for applying standards, so it's difficult to benchmark across all the services. Some still adopt a low risk, medium risk and high risk for different parts of their service, which we don't. We moved away from that 15, 16 years ago to a response standard, and we offer the same response to everyone in Merseyside, a minimum 10 minutes response. How do we achieve it? To achieve the standard, we've got 21 fire stations and a marine rescue base down on the River Mersey. Within those 21 fire stations, we have 34 fire appliances across 5 different duty systems. What this allows us to meet our demand in time in terms of the different shift systems provide us with different number of appliances. So we have more demand of a daytime than we do of an evening, and we can meet that demand throughout the day with the number of appliances. In the event of a major instance, we also have retained factored into that as well, so we can call on extra appliances, bring them back into service to deal with major instance. And going off recent recent HMI reports as well, we are outstanding at responding to major instance. It's due to the cover that we provide in our duty systems and fire stations, and the people that serve on them fire engines and fire stations that we have. Within the 21 stations, so how we manage the stations, so if we have a 3-pump fire pump, we have multiple pumps, fire engines, fire appliances out at instance. We operate with 10 key stations. These are pre-planned, and I'll show you the location on the next slide. What this means is, as long as we have a fire appliance in the vicinity of a key station, it used to be on the key station, but it's in the vicinity, we can meet the majority of Merseyside via mapping isochrones around those key areas to meet the majority of instance within Merseyside within 10 minutes. We implement a software which is called Aura within fire control. So if everyone's been to fire control recently, the technology that they have in there, it's amazing. You see the map with all the blue sections, that's Aura. What that does is that shows us our coverage and our effectiveness to be able to reach everywhere in Merseyside. And what it does is it calculates our cover. So as soon as a fire engine moves, fire engine goes to carry out prevention work within the area, it shows what the area looks like for coverage and what Merseyside looks like. So we can see if we have an instance, we can effectively mobilise to that. So on the appliance standard, so this is the location of our 10 key stations. So as far north as Southport, as far south as Speak, over west, Sogorn Massey, Bromborough, and then out east is St Helens. We also have other stations that surround those key stations also. We don't aim to take 10 minutes to respond to an instance. In reality, we respond much quicker than 10 minutes, but that is our minimum standard. That's what we aim to achieve. I said earlier on, it is difficult to benchmark against other services and national statistics and how we're measured. So MHCLG, they do statistics on fire instance and response times to fires only is what we find. So when we compare, we have our response standard to all life risk incidents, so traffic collisions, chemical incidents, water rescues. When we have the national statistics there to fires only, so fires in the home. But when we do compare ourselves to national statistics, so this is taken from our CRM, this was taken from our CRMP, it was lifted from our CRMP. So when we look at it, the average time is 8 minutes. Major cities 7 minutes 24. Merseyside, our average response within Merseyside was 7 minutes 6 seconds. I've looked at the figures today, I've asked them to be pushed through for me. So if we look at the national standards where we sit today, so this was planning for our CRMP. Where we sit today, we sit at 6 minutes and 58 seconds to a house fire within Merseyside. That's our average time that we take to respond. But as I say, I stated earlier on, with future enhancements in technology, with pre-alert, we should get quicker than that. So that's what we aim to do. We aim to provide the best response possible to Merseyside. We don't just sit and go. We're responding quite well. We're always looking to advance and make ourselves better. So this slide gives us a breakdown of the incidents attended over a 10-year period. It gives us a split between life risk incidents, which are in red at the bottom, and other incidents that we attend in blue. Other incidents that we attend can be categorised as secondary fires, so bin fires, a grass fire, a car fire, where there's no life risk involved, or fire attendants at fire alarms, commercial premises. Over the 10-year period, what we can see is that life risk incidents in red have decreased over 10 years, and that owes to our prevention work, the work that we carry out with fire safety, the work that we carry out in home fire safety checks and prevention. So the life risk incidents that we're attending are less than what we attended 10 years ago. Where our KPI for life risk incidents sits on these incidents here in the red, so last year 1,531 incidents that were categorised as a life risk instance. So when we break that down further, so all this information is provided to us by our strategy and performance team, but we also QA on a regular basis also. So this also gives us a 10-year split, 10-year breakdown for the KPI for TR08. So these are our life risk incidents, and this is our performance. So across the top is the performance that we've had over 10 years. So performance sits, say our minimum standard is 90%. And we sit somewhere between, so it's 96, the last couple of years, 95.9, 96% in meeting that standard to all life risk incidents in Merseyside. Each block that we have represented is a year. And the green shows how many times that we've met the standard. So last year, 1,469. So the year before last, 2024 to 25, 1,469 times that we met the standard. There was 62 times where we didn't. But as you can see, times that we haven't met the standard there's a drop off each year to the point where 62 is probably the lowest. It is the lowest that we've had in 10 years. So what do we do about that? We meet 96%, so we don't sit still, we continue to look at that data and we drill down on that 4%. Again, I've looked at the performance for this year, and our performance standard sits at 96.8% to all life risk incidents in Merseyside. Well, that's where my team come in now. We go, yeah, 96.8 is considerably higher where we want to report. We want to be higher. We want to look into how do we get quicker? How do we get that number up higher? So how do we do that, and what are the reasons? So there are times where we don't meet the standard. So my team work with our strategy and performance team, and we have these monthly reports. We also have our operational assurance meetings where we look and analyse each instance on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and we start to look at our performance responding to all incidents. We look for trends, we look for anomalies, we look for ways to make ourselves better. We QA the data and say, we look at that 4%, the 3-4% and go, where do we need to improve on? Some factors we can't, some factors out of our hands, but some that we look, we identify and we closely monitor and we look to make changes. And there's a list of trends and exceptions that have been identified for that KPI. So I'll just go through them quickly. The time of day. So depending on the time of day, rush hour traffic, getting here today with entry traffic, I'm sure we've had some, but threading a fire engine through traffic sometimes at rush hour 5 o'clock, it's not easy. Put 4 or 5 fire engines going to the same place, it's not easy, but sometimes that does impact us. And rush hour traffic can impact our response. Driving to traffic collisions. So every map, every Google map will tell you to divert away from the traffic collision. We're the only ones heading towards it with the police and NWAS. So sometimes that can be difficult in heading to that type of instance. So when we're heading to traffic collisions, we are dealing with backed up traffic and pulling a fire engine. We work with our health and safety team and we work on lowering appliance collisions. So what we identify and how we look to improve that. We monitor for trends, we look for those types of incidents. We've had some advancements with our mobile data terminals, with traffic updates, moving away from Google Maps, but to a proper traffic update navigation, seeing where all the fire engines are coming from, but also our driver training as well. So our driver training will go out at peak times in busy areas. So if anyone's around from Walton Vale, you'll probably see fire engines going over the three-way bridge, because that's one of our routes, and that can back up with traffic. So our driving team will train new drivers on how to deal with going to with dealing with peak traffic and issues with that. Human error, it happens. So this can be from either, working on adrenaline, going to an instance, OIC not booking in attendance, not hitting the button to book in attendance. It can affect times, and we look to QA and rectify that because it is a reporting. We have the ability to track all of our appliances, so we can see the route that was taken, and we can look and we go, okay, that probably wasn't the best route that you took. Why? Right, how do we get better? That gets fed down to a station level, and we look for those improvements. Or if someone has simply taken a wrong turn, does happen for us. So, but again, we look at that, we quality assure it, and we feed that back into the stations as well, with a view to improving our response. Donning and water rescue PPE. This was a trend that was noticed over a couple of years back with my team. We've made quite a few changes around how we respond. So with water rescue, mud rescue instance, there was a requirement for our crews to don a full dry suit. And again, if we're looking at that KPI for 1.9 minutes, getting off onto a station, get yourself into a dry suit, and then get yourself onto a fire engine, it's not going to work. It's really difficult. So we allowed some. So we looked at that. We looked at 1,500 water rescue incidents over a time frame. Looked at our tactics, looked at our mobilisation. We made some changes. We also invested heavily in the CRMP, into our response for water rescue. And I can say that touch wood, we haven't had any water rescue related fails of the 10-minute response since we made those changes, he says, and then we get the report next month of that. But we've made real big advancements in our response to water rescue, and we've had some really high profile incidents in water rescue over the years. But what that does is, so what we did is we changed our mobilisation for the first attendant appliance to head straight to scene with a flotation device. And what that allows us to do is allows us to make life-saving intervention, but allows us to respond quicker, to be able to put ourselves in a position where we can make a life-saving intervention. We have trained personnel who are trained in water rescue, and we're not putting other members of the public in danger by attempting to make a rescue. I can evidence that by within the first 6 months of the trial for when we made this change, we rescued 3 people from a flash flood in St Helens on New Year's Day in horrendous conditions. So we continue to monitor water rescue. That is one of our, we've noticed a time saving of around a minute or over a minute in some instances where we are getting there quicker on average to water rescue instance. Also, some instances lie outside of our 10-minute isochrone, so the extremities of Merseyside area. Our station coverage, sometimes we can't get to those areas within 10 minutes. What we do is we work cross-border with other fire and rescue services. We have excellent working relationships with Lancashire, Cheshire, Greater Manchester, and we have emergency agreements where we will cover parts of Cheshire. We can get to parts of Cheshire quicker and they can get to parts of Merseyside. So we see that with Heswell getting into the Neston area. We have that with Cronton, with Cheshire and Widnes, and we have those mutual agreements. We work really closely, again through my team in response, to have that cross-border working and mobilisation from fire control. What we're also doing is we're carrying out a emergency cover review. So we are looking at our KPIs, our response models, our key stations, and we go, what can we do different? So everything is back on the table. We look and go, if we were to make changes, what can we make to make us better? And that piece of work is ongoing now, and will shape our next CRMP and Merseyside over the next 10 years, Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, over the next 10 years plus. And also peak demand. So the next two slides that I'll show you, sometimes we will have peak demand, we call them spike conditions, or areas where times throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the year, where there is more of a demand on Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service for us. So summer, that one week a year that we get of summer, then we'll get more grass fires, more secondary fires. Bonfire period, we'll get more antisocial secondary fires in as well as bonfire period. On how we manage that through fire control with our aura technology, to make sure that we can strategically cover Merseyside when we have peak demand, and we feed that back through our performance management group each month. So I'll explain this one. So just look. So this is a heat map taken from a 1-year period from last year. I'm a Liverpool fan, so if those familiar with football and heat maps and player, Liverpool not that great at the minute, so in terms of heat maps we don't really have any, but this is Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service heat maps. What that shows us is the number of incidents that are simultaneously occurring for each hour of the day. So it's taken over a 1-year period. We break it down to each hour of the day, and what we can see is how many separate incidents we have running. So for example, we have between 6 and 7 o'clock 324 occasions where we had 3 separate incidents ongoing at the same time. What it also shows is on this side here, there was 4 occasions where we had 14 separate incidents in one ongoing. So 3 times between 8 and 9 o'clock we had 14 separate incidents. But as I said earlier on, not every incident just gets 1 fire engine. You can have multiple fire engines going through multiple incidents. And it's this data that we use to shape our response. So all of this has an impact on our response and our response times. And then when we have simultaneous incidents, we'll also have times where we'll have multiple appliances tied up, for instance. So with that, 3 pumps, 3 appliances attending a house fire person's reported. You could have a house fire person's reported, and you can have high-rise incidents at the same time, where you have 2 incidents and 8 fire engines engaged. What this data allows us to do, it is vital. It allows us to analyse the data and allows us to look at where we need to improve. So some of this data, it makes its way into our 10-year business plan, it makes it into the bonfire reports that are shared with members. It also allows us to make decisions based on our stations, our duty time, our duty shift system, start times. So previously our start finish time was a 9 till 6, a 9-hour day and a 15-hour night. So some time ago we changed that, and as you can see, that 6 o'clock lands right in the middle of our red peak period. So increased overtime, increased appliance unavailable, appliances changing over. We also introduced a duty system that has a start finish time of 10 o'clock, so it allows for us to change. If we have appliances at instance, we can get them away, get them home, and we can bring in other appliances that don't finish until later on. This data, though, shapes our response times, it also shapes how we run our service as well. So within operational response, we quality assure the data. Say our ops assurance team meets 3 times a week, and it was noted in the recent HMI reports how effective this is, because we're not sitting waiting for months and months of data to land. We have that as well, but we are responding to information coming in, and we have all the attending officers meet in person and on Teams. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 AM. And we talk through instance. It also gives my team an early indication on our performance and go, how did we respond? How effective were we? How do we get better? We do get the monthly reports from strategy and performance, and we QA the data and we look for those trends and we look for those improvements. Some we've made already, some we continue to look and monitor, and sometimes some we'd look to make changes in the future. Some that we have, water rescue response, as I mentioned earlier. Top picture there, that's taken from our drone from a recent waste fire. So one thing we were able to do is identify the use of the drone to apply firefighting tactics to be able to see where fire spread is. You can see the top on so fire spread to nearby warehouses, how many fire engines are tied up at these instances for a prolonged period of time, impacts on our response. So the drone, vital piece of equipment that's used at large scale instance, and our new HRET, high reach extendable turret, HRET, or Scorpion as its trade name is. That entered service this week. We put on the run on the 7th, and that's out available from Southport. It's an impressive piece of kit. So if you haven't seen it, it's available from Southport now. But basically, it's got a piercing spike and its ability to deliver 4,000 or 5,000 litres of water per minute, which is, yeah, in terms of firefight capabilities, it's impressive. What does that do to our response? So whereas we'd have a waste fire on the docks, we'd be there for 2-3 days with 5, 6, up to 10 fire engines. We can bring in specialist appliances now that can deliver more water. HVP, we can release appliances, and that affects our response. And therefore freeing up appliances for the rest of Merseyside. So that's our response. So that's our response standard, getting to an instance. What do we do when we get there? So how do we monitor how well we do when we get to fires? And we look at fires. So the next KPI looks at dwelling fires, home fires, fires in the home, accidental fires that we aim to confine to the room of where they started. Why do we aim to do that? Performance indicator, it looks at fire and heat spread within a property. So what we're able to do is we're able to look and go, is our prevention activity, is our home fire safety checks, is that working? Are we giving the right advice to people in different communities, different parts of Merseyside? Are we telling people to shut their doors overnight? It allows us to look at that. So from our response, we can look into other directorates and go, we tailor our advice for different areas. It allows us to look at our tactics. So putting firefighters inside with different types of hose reel jets, they're really quick for us to get in. Or do we need a greater rate of attack? And we take all of that into consideration. And what that does, most importantly, is it links to saving life and increased survivability within accidental house fires. So we set a KPI to confine fires to the room of origin, to the area where they started. And this is our data again, part of our 10-year review, and we aim for 92% of fires to remain in the original compartments. And that's the data, the performance that we hit to set 97, 98 allows us to look at the tactics that we employ and feeding that back. So the operational assurance team it sits within operational response. What they do is they take the information that comes in through the OA meetings, and that feeds into our operational improvement group, OIG, and we look and we go, what can we change? What feeds into different boards, operations board, and we make recommendations from that data, from that information, straight from the incident ground, from reports, and we go, what changes can we do? We don't sit still. We don't sit and go 96%. We're doing all right. We're always looking to adapt and make ourselves better. For our communities out there in Merseyside. And what that now does is, as I said earlier on, it feeds into our emergency fire cover review of how do we make our response better? Are our stations still fit for purpose? Are our duty systems fit for purpose? Crewing and so on. Everything gets looked into. And what do we do from here on? So the next steps, what we're looking for, continue that QA to enhance the response. Identify trends, identify good practice. So if we are doing something right, if firefighters are feeding that back from us, we're listening to the incident ground from station up to us. We're not making decisions, we're speaking to everyone involved, so we get that fed up to us from our command groups, from our station, from the ground up. We look to improve our response. A lot of the positive response from water rescue came from stations, from the river-based stations that fed from our firefighters. The new technology, say we're looking to bring in the pre-alerts, the enhanced mobilisation. That should be with us this year, where we get that early notification. So as soon as the 999 call comes in, the station is alerted straight away, they're ready to go. And then the evaluation, the emergency fire recovery route, I'm working with Northwest partners, so we sit in the Northwest region, Northwest group, and we open up to our two other fire rescue services and see what they're doing. And if they're doing something good, then we'd look into it and look to make ourselves better. That's it. That's everything that I have. So I will now welcome any questions that you may have.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Neil. Sam?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the figures on the life risk incidents and the other incidents. During the years 2019 to 2021, incidents dropped significantly. Do you think that's got anything to do with COVID? Because they were indoors a lot more and they were more conscientious about what they were doing.
Yeah. Probably sort of, so other incidents, life risk or other incidents in general?
There was a drop in both, but yeah, other incidents more so. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, it would be an indicator. Many factors can influence on overall incidents, but yeah, not as many people outdoors, not as many secondary fires. I don't think we had a busy bonfire period that year. I think we had a bonfire period at that time. So people went out, and so we did see a drop off of that. Collisions were down in that time frame as well. So it is probably an indicator of that time. Yeah.
give you a slight update on that as well. So I think in terms of generally life risk incidents are kind of decreasing, but our other types of incidents are going in the opposite direction. So, you know, that's in terms of supporting other agencies, that's in terms of non-life risk incidents, but in terms of dwelling fires and that, those type of incident specifics, we've seen a drop off. You're right, in terms of around the COVID period, we did. But what we've also noticed, and hopefully Neil's presentations give everyone the reassurance, the level of detail that we do genuinely go into, we've noticed, and I think members will probably know from previous presentations, we did see a rise in fire. So the indicator that Neil mentioned before about room of origin. It's an interesting statistic, that one, because that counts in terms of outdoor living. And what we noticed through COVID periods, and certainly as we emerged from COVID, is there was a big increase in outdoor living. So what I mean by outdoor living, we've seen people converting sheds into bars. We've seen people creating office spaces where we probably have never really seen that, and there's been a real continued growth. And we noticed that through our home fire safety checks. We noticed where we were having the types of fires, and equally what this allows us to do is to be able to, in a similar vein as what Neil's alluding to with our response standard, we've adapted our prevention tactics. So where we're now, you know, going into people's properties, looking at home fire safety checks, about closing doors, etc., etc. It was then, because of the emergence in that trend, was to say, are you using your shed? Are you using your garage as, and then tailor the home fire safety checks to that, because some of the standards that people have maybe installed outdoor living is maybe not the same across the board. I'm trying to be as subtle as it can be. Some of the standards of DIY varies, but we've seen it, we've reacted to it, and I think that's the difference over the last couple of years. So thanks.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you for a very comprehensive report. It's dealt with most of the questions that I had originally. The only thing I'm wondering is that 3 or 4% that are beyond the 10 minutes. Presumably most of them are just 11 minutes or 12 minutes, but are there any particularly significant outliers from that we need to worry about?
Anything over and above, so
Anything significantly beyond the 10 minutes?
nothing. So nothing. You are correct in every the anomaly outside 10 minutes is just outside 10 minutes, and you look and go standard. But outliers. One instance I comes to mind at motorways. So it all depends on that initial information on a 999 call. Motorways seems to be one that just people don't know where they are on the motorway, which junction they're at. So you could have the M6 seems to be a big one. We have one junction of the M6, junction 23 at Haydock, a small section of the M6. We get a lot of incidents that get reported as junction 23. I don't know why. Everyone just remembers junction 23. So there are occasions where we have fire engines that have travelled up and down a motorway looking for an instance. So an RTC, a traffic collision with motorway instance, you can see response times, and that does affect us. You know, we can have a response time of 16, 17 minutes because it's not in the reported location that you expect it to be. But that doesn't mean it's not in Merseyside. We're not going to investigate. We're on the motorway. We will drive into Manchester. I think once had to pull a fire engine back from junction 26 once and go, no, we've gone too far now. We can come back. But yeah, for around motorway instance, yes. But it is down to that information that we receive on the initial call. In terms of property fires, dwelling fires, no. Anything that does breach the 10 minutes is marginally just over that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in relation to that as well, I think in terms of the information members of the public can give us, it does have an effect. But we're looking at technology now. You know, you're looking at like what 3 words. We do get incorrect addresses, which are difficult for fire control to kind of spot. We react to what people are telling us, but equally from a crewing point of view, then that can affect it. And we are talking fine margins, so for every time we maybe don't meet that, as well as the scrutiny, it can skew the figures. But I think in terms of the standard, it is a really high standard, and those increases in the performance and the kind of marginal gains. I think the biggest area that I'm expecting to see is something that we genuinely can control as our alert to mobile time, and that's why we're working so hard to get the enhanced mobilisation. The Aura software that Neil mentioned too earlier on, that's been a big step forward for us also, because that is basically live time dynamic cover tool. So fire control can see where we're vulnerable not to be able to meet those response standards, and can react to it accordingly. That can be by moving appliances around in different areas, but also being it's visual, you can see it, and that can then kind of suggest, okay, we need to look at what we're doing at those incidents to free them up quicker, such as the hate threat, etc., in terms of responding to our tactics. So just wanted to.
Thanks, Chair. Chris?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, not only was I very impressed by the picture you're quite rightly painting of the service that's being provided, which is excellent, but very reassured by, and what I knew was to be the case, the virtually dynamic and constant review of everything, really. Just a question arising from that, from past experience, to really crack down on that small percentage all the time. We often are relying on people saying what they did wrong. I'm sure, presumably, we're very happy. People are happy to come and talk to the teams and say, look, actually, I could have improved this without being criticised for making that admission, for want of a better phrase. And it's a fully cooperative system for getting everyone to look at how they performed on a day, what they could have done better. And I'm sure that's all done very happily by.
Yeah, well, our circle of operational assurance is we look and we learn from, so we have that environment where we go, we didn't make that standard right, let's learn from it for next time, and we put that out to our staff. There are times where we go, we need to understand if we didn't get off the station in 1.9 minutes, we need to understand why. We need to ask those questions, but do it in a constructive way. But we always aim to learn. We're in the game of it. We want to make ourselves better. We want to make that response better next time. So yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Thanks, Neil. There's just a few points that I have. Obviously, the response times is absolutely fantastic that we've had in Maze for a number of years now. And we are probably the best in the country, aren't we, in that sense of responding to any emergency. And it's a shame that I know the response standards was done away with by the previous government. So it's hard to benchmark, isn't it now, between ourselves and other parts of the country, which is a shame really, because when we get the HMI inspectors coming in and evaluating the service and the service delivery, you know, when they look at our response times in comparison to others, you'll see how good and how effective we are with our dynamic working and things like that. So everything that we have in place now, other services could actually use it as best practice, couldn't they? You know, and it's something to be really proud of, that all our staff right throughout the service are all getting this data and using this data more effectively as we're going forward. And it's good to hear that, the fact that, you know, even though we are the best in the country, we're still pushing ourselves to make it even better. Which you know, just goes to show the you know, the sort of our determination and the quality of our staff and our teams to make sure that we do actually improve in something that's already a fantastic outcomes. But there's ways and things about the way we do it. Obviously, vehicles and technology that changes all the time when we're looking at the advancements of that. But I know we've tried in the past. We used to have motorbike, didn't we? We used to have jet skis, and we used to have the small fires vehicles, and you know, I think now we've got 44s. But you know, it's that sort of, is the vehicles that we have are they appropriate for certain areas, and we're looking at different things like that to improve it. Also about the driver training and refreshes to make sure that our drivers have got the full competence that they need when they're driving these appliances and these vehicles. Because I know going back many years when there was that awful incident on Longmore Lane where the appliance went into the house, unfortunately. I was a councillor for that area at the had to deal with some of the issues with that, which is that's very rare, which is a good thing. But it's keeping on top of it, isn't it? Making sure we've got the qualities there. It is of the drivers and the training and everything that's in place, and the vehicles that we need, as well as the equipment that's needed for when we go onto it. One of the things that I know is an issue is when we have new build and postcodes, because they're not actually on the sat nav and you can't really find them, and I think that's a big problem. I don't know how we overcome that, because I know it's difficult, because I know now there's a new apartment block that's in Liverpool city centre by the Armand Ferry terminal. That's not really, if you try to do that in sat nav, it doesn't show up. So if you were called out to that premises, then you'd find it difficult to actually locate where you're going. So I think, how can we improve the likes of that? Because I think it's important as we go forward, especially with the amount of new house building programme that we're going to have across the whole of Merseyside, to make sure that we're on top of that. The other thing is all the delays, with the delays that we have, and you review and have a debrief on them. But I wonder whether, one of the things that's being picked up with me is obviously with the new Everton Stadium. I know you left those supporters to spend with me, so it's not going to down, I know that. But this, because of that, and the concentration of the area, and it's very tight in a sense, isn't it? You've got two main roads, the Dock Road and Great Harrow Street, and obviously on match days it's gridlocked. So if that's an issue, I have raised it in the past, but if it is of any concern for ourselves on it, then I think we should take it higher to make sure that there's appropriate methods in place, that if there's an emergency going from the Derby Road station, that they make sure that the stewards engaged by the club make sure that they can ensure that the traffic flow is eased off, so that the appliances can get through. So there's things like that, like little things that we can do to improve things. The final thing as well is obviously that the response times is on the first appliance, but I'm sure on the second appliance and subsequent appliances on bigger incidents, that our time frame is still as good, isn't it, on responding to the bigger incidents?
It is, yeah. Do you want me to answer on first point or? I'll
Usually the first one.
all three. New builds, so our operational intelligence, so as soon as a new build property, as soon as it's the building control, our plans are put in plan permission, it goes into our operational intelligence team. It's assigned a UPRN number, a unique reference number, and that's put into our mapping straight away. So new developments are provided to emergency services, put into fire service. So our mapping tools on the mobile data terminals have the new build property as soon as we're notified, as soon as it's there and ready to go. It's on our mapping system. Everton Stadium, yeah, agree with that it's congestion problems around Derby Road and on the old Dock Road, Regent Road. What we have is we have a match day control. We have an officer that goes into every Liverpool home game and every Everton home game. An officer sits in there 2 hours before the match and then 2 hours after the match. We set up an alerting area, a red bar we call it, and that's just a zone system around the stadium, and any incidents that occur in that area or in the vicinity of it, we notify the matchday controller, who works with the stewards inside the stadium and the police, and also our fire control. We're aware of an instance in there, so we have an emergency procedure that we will then enact if we have an instance within the red bar area. For any Liverpool or Everton game, but agreed, yeah, it is heavily congested around that area, but we do work well with both Liverpool and Everton for an emergency response. And then our second appliance times, yes, I haven't got the figures there to hand, but second appliance times with our 21 stations, you can expect the fire engine within a couple of minutes behind the first fire engine. Normally they're on the same time. So we do look at second appliance, and it is something that we are looking at in our emergency cover review of the second appliance and what that brings us in terms of reducing fire spread tactics, more firefighters on the ground. But we do look at that as well. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much. Now, any more questions?
Just a quick one coming off what Dave said. Really, when do you get notified of new builds? When the planning application's been granted? So would it be the local authority that inform you, or would it be the housing developer?
I'm not 100% sure which day, so it comes into our operation intelligence team. So I think we're notified at the planning phase, and then we work with local authority also.
Okay, thanks.
So it is a multi-phase, and then we get a notification of when a high-rise building is. So our fire safety team will have to work to inspect the premises if it's commercial or high-rise residential. So we'll be notified at various points during the stage of build.
Okay. More questions? Okay, thank you very much, Neil. That was very good, comprehensive. It gives us a better idea about, obviously, sort of second by second, how we deal with it and how we respond to it. So for members of the authority, I think it's really useful. Thank you.
Well, drop in on the station, go speak to the and they are all proud of how they respond. We've talked about those already, so yeah, drop in on stations and they'll tell you about their areas and how where they get to and how quick they do. But yeah,
Okay, can we approve the recommendation then in the report? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, item 5. Item 6 is the scrutiny forward work plan. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be familiar that this is a standard item brought to members on the progress of the Scrutiny Forward Work Plan for 25-26. A copy of the work plan is contained in Appendix A, which is on page 19 of this agenda pack. Members will note that all bar one have been presented to members throughout this municipal year. Originally, we had the last remaining item, management of contaminants, provisionally to be brought to this meeting also. However, having become aware of some further works that are going to be undertaken regarding contaminants, and in particular there will be an inspection by the Health and Safety Committee due with documentation to be reviewed around May, that we felt it was more prudent to bring it to the next meeting of the Scrutiny Committee so we can feed back to members the outcome of that inspection. So whilst provisionally it'll be around the meeting in July, it will be over into the next municipal year. That's why it's suggested to members that that is carried over into the next Scrutiny Forward Work Plan for 26-27. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Yeah. No? Good.
Out of interest, when is the next scrutiny committee meeting?
So the dates will be confirmed at the AGM in June, but they'll be provisionally, I know it'll be towards the end of July. I don't have the set date yet approved. It's usually around the 25th of July.
Okay. They will get circulated when the AGM papers go out, so we'll know in advance anyway. If there's any issues with any of the dates, obviously you can raise it at the AGM so we can look at alternatives if it's going to be an issue. Also, if there's any items that members wish to have on the agenda, they consider that we need to scrutinise a bit more, then please, obviously, let the chair know. So that we can put that in the work programme for the coming year, if that's okay.
Absolutely, and what we've been doing for the last few years, we will hold a scrutiny workshop just after the AGM where we'll meet with the ACFO about what's going on in the organisation, about different areas that members might want to scrutinise that we then put forward as part of the new work plan.
I know one of them obviously with the recent HMI inspection and the report, and obviously one of the recommendations that is picked up from that will probably be included in the plan warning for the coming year. Okay. Anything else? No, that's great. That concludes the business. So thank you for your attendance and the questions. And
can I just confirm that those recommendations are approved?
sorry. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll see you at the
Yes, thank you.